Hello and welcome to this new video for Revit 2024. This year I've decided to do things slightly differently. I've split out the videos into two separate themes. So the first video that we're watching now is the platform technology and changes. This will affect everybody using Revit. In my second video I'll just focus in on the structural updates and new features. So let's get going with the platform technology. The first thing we'll look at is the user interface. Now, Autodesk have spent quite a lot of time getting this refreshed for Revit 2024. All of the icons on the ribbon tabs have had a repaint and a refresh. This is to support the new dark theme that Autodesk have now released in this version. Also, we have a completely new project browser and new properties palette. Both of these are built on a new framework which will drastically improve performance and functionality. Let's start by taking a look at the new dark theme. Now, if your Windows setup is set to use dark theme by default, you'd have noticed when you started up Revit for the first time, it's already using that dark theme. But I'll switch mine across. So I'm going to go to the File tab, and then I'm going to select Options. In the Options dialog, I'll select Colors, and we can now see that we have a new function for the UI Active theme. You'll notice that again, mine is using system settings. So as I've said, if I already had the dark theme for my system setting, this would have automatically had the black dark theme background and canvas. But in this case, what I'm going to do is just manually override this to dark. Now, before I click this, if you just take a look at the canvas colors, you'll see that they're all preset for that light theme. As soon as I check dark in here, you can see now they've all been updated and changed to support that new dark theme. Let's click OK, and we'll then see that dark theme applied to the interface. Okay, so you can now see the interface has completely changed along with the canvas. If I start to hover over icons here to pre-select them, you can see it's now using that kind of light blue color that we've set in the presets. Of course, the big thing you'll notice that all the ribbon tabs and icons are now supporting that dark theme. And that's why Autodesk have now repainted all of these icons. I think they look really, really good. Now, something to note with the dark theme is this is the first step, and you'll notice that it's just really the first level user interface that's changed. So for example, if I open up Visibility Graphic Overrides dialog, you can see that this is as it was in previous releases. I'm sure Autodesk will change this in subsequent releases. Now, I think the dark theme is a bit subjective. Some people will love it, some people will really want to go back to how it looked previously. And I think for the rest of the video, for clarity, I'm just going to go ahead and put this back to our standard light theme. So again, I'll go to Options, Colors, and in this case, I'll set this to use System Settings, which is using my light theme. Okay, so let's now look at the next feature, which is the project browser. Now, like I've said, the project browser is built on a completely new framework. And one of the really good things with this now is we have this search function. So let's begin by searching for some views. Let's say that I want to find all of my sections in the project. I can just type in the word section and you'll see straight away that the project browser has been searched, not only for views, but things like sheets, schedules and families as well. So that's very, very useful. Let's try another example. So here I'm going to search for one of my beams titled T4, and I can now see that I actually have that opened up. So let's begin by opening up a sectional view. Now at this point, I might want to insert some other types of details and so on. So I'm going to go and search for the break line, and straight away here, I can now see that I've got a break line searched. I can just, of course, drag and drop that into the model and directly use that in the canvas. So that is a huge improvement to Revit. As we said previously, the performance has drastically improved with this function as well. Because it's built on a new framework, we have new functionality and, of course, improved performance. Another thing you'll notice here as well is when something's selected, we get this solid blue bar all the way along the view. So it's much, much easier to actually see what we're actually working with here. Okay, so let's now look at the next new functionality, which is linking a coordination model directly from Autodesk Docs. So actually here, you can see on the Insert tab, I have this coordination model icon, and you'll notice we have now a drop-down menu. So we can insert a local one, as we used to do before, which is directly from Navisworks, or now we can insert one from Autodesk Docs. So just to demonstrate this, I'll open up a 3D view, and now we'll go ahead and insert a model from Docs. Now this is quite exciting because obviously here we can store multiple files inside docs. So it's not just about Revit. Of course, we can store things like Inventor, Civil 3D, Plant 3D, Advanced Steel models, and so on. So in this case here, you can see that I'm searching for my bridge project, and you'll notice here that I have an Inventor file, an IPT file. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. We can obviously view this and actually check it, rotate around it, make sure it's the one we want. So now we're going to insert this origin to origin, and I'll go ahead and select link. Okay, so that model's now been linked in and we can clearly see it in the building here. So I'll select the bridge pier, unpin it, and I'll just drag this out into the view so we can see it a bit clearer. And there it is. So now this is really, really useful for in-context modeling. Now, not only can I obviously see it in the various different views, but I can actually snap to it as well using the point snap. So that's really, really useful. Let's take a look at this in another type of view. So in the project browser, I'm going to double click on the 01 plane. And of course, now we can see our bridge pier in the context of this view. So let's try and cut a section through this. So we'll section the model directly through the bridge pier itself. I'll just change the depth of the section here so we're not elevating too much of it. Perhaps something like this. And then we'll go ahead and look at that sectional view. So you can now see we have the pier sectioned. And just to show you a little bit about the snapping, if I select the Annotate tab and I then go to Detail Lines, we can see very clearly here that we can snap to these relevant bits of geometry. And like I said, this is using something called Point Snap, which is quite useful. So the purpose of this in Revit is really just about coordination and in-canvas modelling around these various different linked items from Autodesk docs. Building on the last few releases, Autodesk have also made significant improvements to the way that we can manage sheets and views. Let's take a look at some of those improvements now. We'll begin by taking a look at the functionality of opening a sheet directly from the view. So we can see here that assuming a sheet exists, we can right mouse and just directly open up that sheet view, which is really useful. Once we have sheet views open, we can see here that if we expand the sheet, we have a number of views on the sheet. Now we can very simply drag and drop views between sheets. So for example, if I decided I wanted the T4 section B on this next sheet down, you can see here that I can literally just drag and drop that from one sheet to another. So that is really, really useful. Not only can we drag and drop it, but it will maintain its view position. This can either be done one by one, or you can select multiple views and drag those as well. Now, of course, if you have numerous sheets in your project, you can simply select the views like this, right mouse click, and then you can move Align to Sheet. So, of course, from here, we can then go ahead and select the sheet. And building on the search function from the project browser, we can just go ahead and really easily find the sheets we're looking for just by typing in search terms. So very, very useful. Whilst we're here, we'll look at another new feature attached to sheets, which is multiple revisions. So this is something people have been asking for quite a few years now. So if I select the 4 sheets here, what we can then do is directly go to revisions on sheets. We can then go ahead and pick the one that we want to use, simply tick the box, and those revisions are added to those multiple sheets simultaneously. So that's really quite useful. Whilst on the same theme of revisions, we can now schedule revision clouds. So if we take a look at this sheet here, we can see that we're currently on revision C01, and you'll notice that we've got a revision history in here, and of course one cloud modelled. If I go to the elevations drawing over here, again, you can see that we've got 2 internal revisions in here, and again, we have 2 clouds to suit. So to schedule these, we can simply go to the View tab, and we can go to Schedules in a normal way, and then select Schedules Quantities. The difference here, of course, is we can now schedule revision clouds. Now this is quite interesting because when we select OK here, you'll notice not only can we actually choose fields from the revision clouds category, but we can also get revisions from views and sheets and project information as well. So if I just open up one of the schedules that I've already created over here, you can now see that we've got the sheet number from the actual sheet itself, the sheet name, the current revision, the date, description, and then the issued information. This is also very useful for quality assurance on views, sheets, and revisions. And now, of course, we can support revisioning systems from our latest BIM standards. Another small change has been made to colours. So to demonstrate this, we'll go ahead and select the Annotate tab, and we'll create a field region. Whilst creating a filled region, of course, we can then go to Edit Type and then choose Colours. Now, if I choose a solid fill in here, and then I select the colour box, you'll now notice that we've got a new function called Colour Books. And if I go into the Colour Books here, very similar to AutoCAD, you can now see that Revit will support all of the standard Pantones and Rail classics. So again, quite useful if you need to actually use these standard colours. Let's now take a look at Topo Solids. The first thing to note now is Topo surfaces have been superseded by Topo Solids. So if we select the Massing and Site tab, we can now see that the Topo Surface tool doesn't feature in the toolset. Instead, we have this new function called a Topo Solid. The Topo Solid shares many of the same functions as a Topo Surface, but with additional benefits of having an actual solid model. In the example here on screen, you can see that I've got this retaining wall structure, and then you can see I've excavated the Topo Solid to create a tunnel or a culvert in here. This is really useful. Also, I've been able to accurately cut away the Topo Solid to house my retaining wall structure. Annotations can now also be placed in 3D. So let's switch to the main 3D view over here, and we can now see our Topo Solid. In this example, the Topo Solid has been created simply by converting the Topo Surface. So the Topo Solid has very similar properties to something like a floor. If I select the Topo Solid and I select Edit Type in the Properties palette, you can see here that we have a type called Topo Solid 1. And if I edit the structure, in this example here, you can see that I've got grass, I've got earth, and then I've got stone. And if I go to the preview here, you can actually see those layers built up. Now here, we can only currently have one layer that's actually varying in thickness. So you can see in this case, I've got the grass that's varying in thickness, and then I've got the earth at 2000, and then the stone at 5000. Of course, you can build up fairly complex Topo Solids using this process. I'm going to select OK to the Edit Assembly dialog box. And we'll now look at excavating the Topo Solid to take some foundations. So I'm going to just switch here to the entry level plan, and we'll create some foundations. To do this, I'll go to the Structure tab and I'll select Isolated Foundation. You can now see, of course, just like it would have done with a Topo Surface, you'll see that the foundation is hosting itself onto the Topo Solid. So I'll just place down some of these foundations here. And then what I'm going to do is actually place out a component that I've pre-authored, which is what I'm naming the foundation excavation. So what I can now do is place these down where I want them to go. So of course they'll go and sit directly over the foundations in this example here. I'll then go into my 3D view and you can now see those excavations. Now what's really neat now is I can simply just cut those from the Topo Solid. So I can go to Cut. We'll do a multiple cut here, and I'll select the Topo Solid first, and then of course I can just go through and start to actually select the excavation families that I've built in here, and you can see very easily I can then start to excavate the solids around the foundation. Now what's good about this is I've currently got an existing ground model, and I've also then got the proposed ground model. So if I go into the schedule here and I open up my Topo Solid schedule, you can see in here that we've got the existing volume of the Topo Solid, and of course now the new volume with those excavations in place. So that's really useful. Another thing we can do back in the 3D view is we can actually place out annotations without having to actually lock the view. So in this case here, I could go to the Annotate tab, and here I could go to perhaps Spot Slope. And you can see now I can actually preview those slopes. Currently it's doing it as a percentage, but of course we can change that. I might want a slopes surface in here using degrees. I'll go back to a percentage, and of course then I can just literally left click to place those down where I want to actually see those grades on the slope. We can also do a very similar thing with our spot elevation, so I can actually just take spot levels where I want like this. Of course, as you can already see, we can actually have the same contour lines that we would have done with a Topo Surface. So this is a very welcome addition to Revit 2024.